Altadena is where I bought my first home. A sweet little Spanish bungalow by the mountains that I called my secret garden. The soil was rich and the land lush and fertile. I had an orange and papaya tree, which afforded me many glasses of fresh squeezed orange juice and papaya smoothies. I grew grapes, herbs. I had a small koi pond. And because bees were going extinct, I had flower bushes for the bees to propagate in the spring. I loved feeding the bluebirds and hummingbirds. Although I also learned that praying mantises eat hummingbirds. Yes. I was horrified sitting in my backyard when I saw this praying mantis strike at this hummingbird that was sipping from my feeder. But that was the land. And then there was the community, active, full of love, culture, and resilience. Working families, homeowners, renters, young and old, married and single, shared housing and collectives. My neighbors' kids played in my yard and hung out in my living room. We exchanged gifts on birthdays and holidays. We all helped and looked out for each other. And of course, I can't forget the animals. Possum, raccoons, coyotes, mountain lions, bobcats, skunk. Now, it took me some time to get used to all the wildlife, but in Altadena, they were a part of the community too. We were an ecosystem. On January 7th, I watched the wildfires tear through my former community, taking lives and displacing all those families. Heartbroken, cannot describe or capture the anguish that I felt for weeks and still feel. But what gives me hope is knowing that those residents are drawing on the resilience and love for their community. They are showing up for one another without hesitation, cooking meals, offering shelter, and sharing what they have. And being fearless in their imagination about what can come next after this almost unimaginable devastation. This is the Los Angeles that I know and love. The Los Angeles that has given me the gift of imagining more and daring to do my part alongside community to create it. More for myself and my family, more for the communities that I work in, more for our world. LA was also the birthplace of my community organizing journey, as was mentioned. It was the first place where I understood how deeply climate justice is tied to racial, gender, and economic justice. I was in college at UCLA and decided to become an intern at this organization in South LA called Scope. And I'll never forget my first house meeting, where I took notes on butcher paper while Black and Latinx grassroots leaders ate together, told stories, and educated each other about the source of problems in their neighborhoods. They talked about the environmental harm imposed on our community for profit, about the intentional placement of highways that surrounded us from the north, south, east, and west, about the diesel trucks that drove through our community every single day, oil drilling and fracking sites that were adjacent to schools and homes, the chemical plants that made their air less breathable and their children sick. But they didn't just stop there talking about the problems. They imagined solutions. They talked about a different world they could create together, telling themselves a story about what the future could look like. Radical imagination was the driving force for building power. Growing up in poverty, I was told a story about who holds power. White people, wealthy people, men. But I knew that story was false. Yes, stories can give us inspiration and hope for the world. But sometimes, stories can give us a false sense of the world and our place in it. They can confine us and make us feel smaller. But that day, at that house meeting in South LA, I learned the power of creating our own stories. I learned that decisions are being made every single day that impact our lives with or without us. I learned that oppressive systems don't happen by chance or coincidence, but they are designed. But we can organize and build and exercise the power we need to design our own story. And I believe it's radical imagination that will help us create a different story, not just for ourselves, but stories for our communities and our country. Together, we have the power to imagine and weave a story that is not just for the betterment of a few, but for the betterment of all of us. My current work as CEO of the Solutions Project focuses on scaling the climate solutions of grassroots leaders across the country. And in fact, some of them are right here in Los Angeles. That work has shown me the power of imagining and creating new and unexpected stories. We live in a world that tells us a story about how climate is a topic for men, for scientists, for technologists, for the wealthy. But our leaders prove every day that folks who live in places most impacted by climate change and by climate-driven disasters like the LA wildfires are actually the best equipped to imagine, innovate, and build the solutions we need. There's an old African proverb that says, "Until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero." Think about the stories that have activated and emboldened you in the last 5 years. Maybe it was the murder of George Floyd and the movement for Black lives, or the courageous women who were brave enough to tell their stories and spark the Me Too movement, or the imagery from Standing Rock that inspired solidarity and shared purpose with the water protectors. These movements were energized by stories. Stories just don't prompt us to empathize. They embolden us to take action. Stories can also shift our mindset from fear and rage, which can spark short-term action, into hope, joy, and imagination, which are critical tools for building long-term collective power for change. The community of Altadena reflects this too. After the horror and the tears, there was hope. 2 weeks after the Eaton fires, hundreds of residents gathered at Robinson Park Recreation Center for what they called Dena Love Day. Food trucks gave away food, and a live DJ played while people danced and grieved together. Hairdressers offered braiding services next to FEMA employees helping people apply for disaster relief. And in the days and weeks since the fires, our movements are working tirelessly on a vision for long-term repair and resilience, working to disrupt developers' attempt to swoop in and capitalize on disaster. The building blocks for community reimagining are already being laid. When communities tell their own stories, they are not victims, but victors and visionaries, rewriting the narrative from disempowerment to self-determination. Their work is a testament to what happens when communities take control of their own stories, ensuring that solutions don't just come from the top down, but from the bottom up. It is community imagination that must always be at the center. And the more support that we as funders can offer to communities impacted by racism, poverty, and pollution, the more those communities will imagine a more joyful and just future where they are the heroes and sheroes of their own story. The power of imagination and capacity to change our story must be protected and cultivated, especially when in this moment, so many counter-narratives are pushing against us. We are facing climate change deniers using their political power to gaslight us all. Up is down on literally every issue. Democracy, climate change, reproductive rights, family values, equity, diversity, you name it. They are using the news and social media to misinform and malign, to invoke fear and overwhelm, and to spread hate. They've taken the very narratives we've created and they've appropriated, undermined, and villainized them because they also know that stories are powerful. So how do we make sure the narratives and stories we believe in are not only protected, but amplified. How do we harness the power of our imagination in this moment when our own government is working so hard to roll back all the progress we've made? Philanthropy, at its heart, in its true meaning, is about love. And that's what needs to drive us. In a moment where people are looking to us for leadership, we must hold love at our core and reject the false story that philanthropy is or must be self-serving, competitive, and siloed, that we are fragmented, uncoordinated, capricious, and unstrategic. I mean, look at this room. Donors, activists, governments, civil society institutions, corporations. In this current political moment, many would have us believe that such a gathering of people united for equity and justice would be simply impossible. They don't believe in philanthropy as a vehicle for love, for connection, for liberation. At best, they see it as a tool to buy influence that can be put down when it's no longer needed. Their story is a false one, and it's up to all of us working together to prove it. We can't just ride the waves when the current is with us, and then retrench when the current is against us. And we've certainly seen too many who have done exactly that in the past few months. This ain't the time to be timid, y'all. When the water and the current is against us, we have to enter the water anyway. And we have to enter the water together, pushing forward because our strength is our unity, our love, and our knowledge that our lives and our planet are interdependent. And with that, we have the power to create our own waves. And our collective love and commitment to action will carry us forward. In this critical moment for LA, for our country, for our world, it is our duty, all of us here in this room, to use our access to power and wealth to advance the stories of the people closest to the problems and solutions. But these stories just can't be told. They must be funded, resourced, and rooted in relationships. Stories change nothing without money behind them. They remain dreams or illusions, but they are the building blocks we need for a more just and equitable world. With bold imagination, partnerships, persistent action, and organizing, just look at what grassroots climate movements have achieved in this country. Clean energy now employs 3.3 million Americans. That's 1 in 50 workers in the entire country. And in 2023, 3.4 million US families saved over $8 billion on home energy upgrades. And in the past 3 years, the Solutions Project's grantees alone have delivered climate solutions to 1 million people and passed policies benefiting 100 million more. They rewrote the story of their lived realities. So I ask you, if they have the audacity to imagine and create a better world, shouldn't we? My call to you is to think about what you could dare to imagine for your own philanthropy. Maybe it's giving bigger and bolder than you've ever imagined you could. Maybe it's funding unrestricted climate solutions that are intersectional. Maybe it's emergency and resilience funding right before a disaster hits, during, or after the disaster strikes. Imagine what you could achieve if your philanthropy truly activated the stories and voices that you believe in. This is the moment to rebuild. This is the opportunity for us to tap into radical imagination about what investing in a new story looks like. Los Angeles has given me the gift of imagining a better world. Let's give our people the gift of imagining something better. A better world for themselves and their families, a better world for their communities, a better world for all of us. Because I know we can create a better world together, one that is inclusive, rooted in abundance, interdependence, care, and connection. a world worth fighting for. Thank you.